You are listening to Rooted to Earth, a SAE Innova podcast.
There is no environmental impact without social impact. If you plant these huge reforestation projects, the chances of them being degraded are huge because the community that is surrounding it, it's not benefiting from it in an economic level. And you do that by creating productive systems based in forest. When we talk about regeneration, we cannot talk about land only. We need to talk about a system that integrates people. We have this knowledge. Let me hear what you have and see how we can both add to something that is going to create something bigger, more organized, nicer, but always listening first. When you have monoculture, you have monoculture of land, you have monoculture of species, you have monoculture of ideas. And that's very harmful because the natural way is diversity.
This is a space for real conversations, from farmers and scientists to community leaders and innovators, each of them working to bring nature back into balance. This is Rooted to Earth.
In this episode of Rooted to Earth, we talk with Clara Johannpeter. She is the Chief Operational Officer of Agroforestree. With a strong background of involvement on social and environmental causes, Clara has helped develop projects for non-governmental organizations and has co-founded Reload Positive Beauty, Brazil's first company to develop vegan beauty products filled in post-consumer mineral water bottles. She also founded Forest, which has a mission to measure and make visible environmental service provided from forest and its social impact. Today, Clara acts with Agroforestry Carbon, regenerating the planet, planting trees in agroforestry systems alongside small farmers. Hi, Clara. Thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you for the invitation.
How are you?
I'm great. This Saturday on the weekend, we did a forest management community event. So that gave me a boost for the week.
Great. But first, if we have to go a little bit backwards, how did your path cross ways with Agroforestry Carbon?
Well, I've been working with impact, social, environmental impact, and agroforestry for over 9 years now. So it's been a while. And first, I started working with homeless people, and they had situations of drug abuse. And we saw permaculture and agroforestry as a means to heal. When I first discovered agroforestry and permaculture and nature-based solutions, was more with the goal of affecting people's lives in a more regenerative form of social impact. Then I worked with that for 4 years, and then I joined a cosmetic company. We worked with, basically we did cradle to cradle, right? Which is a concept of like circular economy. We used to go to hotels, bars, restaurants, get water bottles, hygiene them, like clean them, and put shampoo on and conditioner and like beauty products. And it was like very amazing. We were growing a lot. It was very nice. But then there was this legislation in Brazil that forbidden plastic reuse for cosmetics at the time. So we had to stop. And then when we had to stop, it was the beginning of the pandemic. I decided that I wanted to work with agroforestry again. And then I had to make this choice if I would rather like buy a piece of land and produce as a farmer, or if I would create a project that helped create income and strengthen the lives and the resources for the small farmers, which are actually on the field doing the change. So I funded N Forests, which was a startup, and we started by doing a lot of research on agroforestry carbon, how to produce. We tried many models of agroforestry production, many studies, and then I started working with technology a little bit. We funded also an institute. I also worked like giving advice to startups. We set it up, this technology institute. And after that was rolling, I was like, no, I want to really start working with agroforestry more intensely, like dedicating full time to that. And that's when I re-encountered Gabriel, which is my partner. And then we were at this event and he said to me, hey, we're doing this. I want you with us. Let's have some meetings. Maybe we can do something together. So it was a great opportunity and we merged the companies.
Wow.
We also believe a lot on collaboration because like we work with forests. So we saw it as a great opportunity to grow the team, to grow the resources. So this is how I ended up here.
You just mentioned at the beginning that you had an energizing weekend. How important is that aspect, being the COO of Agroforestry Carbon, in projects where I assume there's a lot of administrative work, paperwork, spreadsheets, processes that not necessarily bring you close to the people on the ground every day. So how important it is to be in contact, literally face to face, with the people involved on farms and with the agroforestry projects?
No, that's a great question. I think we were born as a company, and Gabriel also has this same, I think everybody in the company does. We were born because we wanted to create opportunity, income, and to help the small farmers, right? Of course, we want to build an amazing company that has profit, that goes well, that grows. But the reason why we do it is because we believe in regenerative systems, forestry systems, with small farmers, with farmers, right? So being able to be with them, to put our hands in the ground, to chop banana trees, to re-nourish the soil, to actually put our hands into the work is absolutely important. It reminds us, and not only reminds us because I think we have that very clear in our heads, but in our minds, but I think it reconnects us with the why we're doing it, right? At least I'm always going to these events and to we call them mutirões, like it's like the communal management of the agroforestry. Like at least 2-3 times a month, I go to one of them, to keep the hands in the ground, because the paperwork is super important, but the land kind of gives you the boost to keep going.
Which projects are you carrying on nowadays with the company? Are all there based in Brazil?
Yes, all of the projects are based in Brazil. I mean, Brazil is huge, right? So we're not looking to extend operations out of Brazil for a while, I think, because it's already, like Brazil, it's a continental country. So currently we have 2 types of products. It's actually 3, but one of them is just because the companies kind of need it. But I'll explain to you a little bit. It's like we have the inventory for greenhouse gases. We only added that to the portfolio because companies were like, oh, we want to compensate, but they didn't know how much. So we added this service to help them go to our core, which is compensation through impact. I usually say that what we sell is the impact. It's the impact that the companies can have and the people can have on the chain of producing food based in forests. Today we have basically two main products, which is one, it's for small and medium companies, which is the compensation program, right? So instead of compensating with the carbon credit that you don't know where it came from, where the money is going to, what is happening there, right? We help the companies to compensate and to offset planting agroforestry system with small farmers. So we have a platform for that. You can either sign one of our plans, or you can talk to us and see we can come up with a specialized plan. But it's a bit more simple. We just go to the farmers and say, hey, what have you planted or what are you planting? We map the trees out and we do the compensation. And that's really, really important because it gets the money, it gets the resources going straight to the farmer's hands. And it decentralizes the income generation for many farmers, small farmers and cooperatives, right? So this is a very, very important work for us. And the other one, which is a bigger scale when it comes to the sense, it's the personalized projects. Personalized projects, like now we have 66 small agroforestry implemented with one of the companies in Maranhão, which is a state that has Amazonic rainforest that is being very degraded by soy. We have other projects in the Amazon rainforest of planting like 300,000 trees. And so we have this more personalized projects that we go into the communities with companies and implement agroforestry systems, basically to generate impact, to achieve ESG goals. So we have these two products. One is more for small, medium businesses, which is the compensating. They can compensate every month, every year. And we have the personalized projects, which are usually bigger. And we go there, we teach the communities how to implement, we generate the KPIs, we help them, we do the management, we create the what's the best consortium, what's the best choose to help them choose the type of plants that are going to generate income. And we also realize that we can create supply chain projects based on that. So instead of just helping the communities implement the agroforestry systems, we can also help them to connect with the companies to generate forest-based economies.
My next question has two parts. I think the first part you already answered, but why small farmers? Why working with small farmers especially? And how do you get small farmers and rural communities? How do you get their support and commitment and engagement on these long-term projects?
When we talk about agroforestry, there's no agroforestry, like 10% of the agroforestry is implementation. The rest is the management. It's pruning, it's getting the organic material from the top of the trees to the ground so you can create soil. It's a harvest. So you cannot do agroforestry without many hands. It's also the reason why we go to the field a lot, because it is important to do the back office work, but what agroforestry needs, it's hands on. There is no environmental impact without social impact. If you plant this huge reforestation projects, the chances of them being degraded are huge because the community that is surrounding it, it's not benefiting from it in an economic level. So when the incomes get scarce, they'll go to the forest and they'll cut again. So you have to create an economy that integrates people, right, into the forest. And you do that by creating productive systems based in forests. So the reason why small farmers is because if you want to preserve the land and preserve the forest, you got to integrate people into this economy. And I guess how you do it is creating incentives. So I studied economics, right? So this is so the thing is, you got to create the right incentive for people to engage on whatever you need. And of course, money is one, right? So we pay for the trees that were planted. The companies pay. We provide the opportunity for the companies to pay for the trees that were planted. So the farmer gets the income incentive. But I think one incentive, which is less obvious, is the reason why we do what we do, which is we believe that they are the solution. And by believing that they are the solution, we have a very good connection with them and we listen to them. And I think this trust interaction, right? This trust that creates a very good incentive for the project to keep going. We have this huge group with many farmers, and they can all talk, they can all complain if they don't like something, they can all share if there's something worked out, and it's an amazing group. It's basically a trust interaction. Like, they have our personal numbers, we're going to talk to them, we talk to them. So we created this community, right, based in trust. I guess that's one of the biggest incentives.
If we compare a production system like business as usual with agroforestry systems, how does it impact performance and cost when involving small farmers?
Okay, I'm gonna try and separate like farmers and small businesses versus market and performance, right? Agroforestry systems, when we're talking on small scale, they are much more profitable. They do have that valley, which was also the reason why we want to pay per tree planted, because we want to reduce a little bit this effort that the farmer has to put in to transform from monoculture to agroforestry. But in a medium long term, and sometimes even a little short term, agroforestry can be more profitable if we talk like small scale. So for a small farmer to transition, it can be very good. And then we enter, that's our part, we try to enter with the biggest amount of incentive that we can give. But when we talk about agroforestry, market wise, right, and productivity, when we talk about large scale, it isn't yet a super productive model compared to monoculture. And there is one reason for that, which is, and the reason it's easier when it's made as a question, which is how much money was invested in monoculture and how much money was invested in nature-based solution systems. If you compare, and even now, I'm not talking about how much was spent I'm talking about how much is been spent right now, the amount of incentives, the lack of tax, everything, right? So if you would give just like 1/5 of that to agroforestry systems, we could make it so much more productive, right? There are some companies already doing large scale agroforestry systems and going well. It's not like absolutely proven model, but they're doing well. But I guess it's just a matter of incentives in the end. It's like how much money is being put on developing new technologies for systems that are gonna save nature instead of destroying it.
Yeah, of course. But on a wider perspective, how open are the private and public sectors to the development of agroforestry implementation or agroforestry projects?
It's very particular, actually. I mean, it depends on the company, it depends on the founders, it depends on the boards, it depends on the goals. Government, the same. It depends who's there, right? But I think there is a lot of opportunity. I think we do need bigger companies to invest in sustainable chains, not only compensate their impact, but to invest in developing supply chains based in nature that contemplate people. And I think they want to, but I think the main challenge is on giving this initial investment, knowing that it might not return, right? This is science. All science needs level 1 base research, right? Society nowadays of only investing in things that give immediate return. So we need to fund at least a bit more research, base research, before we can have the same profitability as monoculture, for instance.
Something I'm very interested in knowing your perspective, your opinion. It's the comparison between opportunities, challenges in Latin America as a region, for example, compared with Europe. So what do you think are the challenges faced by Latin America as a region when implementing regenerative projects compared to, for example, let's say Europe? Or maybe are not challenges, maybe are just opportunities, but I suppose you can find both.
I mean, we have a lot of land. I guess this is an opportunity. And we need to regenerate that land. But I think there is one thing that is the main thing, actually. We need to involve people. And at least here in Brazil, but I guess Latin America, everybody wants to be recognized by the work they do. But we have a base, a society base, which is the majority of people that work endlessly, get very low payment, work extreme hours, and are not recognized for it. So when we talk about regeneration, we cannot talk about land only. We need to talk about a system that integrates people into the regeneration. Otherwise, it's not regenerating anything. If you don't regenerate the system, you're not regenerating. If you only regenerate the land, it's going to be turned down again. And I guess in Europe, that is a bit less because people they have more access to education, to health, to culture, to leisure, to basic needs, and not needs, but rights that here in Latin America and in emerging countries in general, we don't have. So when we talk about creating agroforestry, when we talk about regenerating, we need to create the space for the local cultures to be experienced and not only create work. And I guess that's the bit of the difference between agriculture in Europe and agriculture and labor in Latin America and emerging countries.
How is your approach with the educational aspect or the knowledge transfer alongside the project stakeholders?
That's a very interesting question because, as we mentioned, Europe, we have to be very careful to not be colonizers, right? To not come with a knowledge and say, here it is, let's apply it to the land. Brazil is very diverse culturally in many senses. Being on the species, it's very diverse. People, very diverse. Cultures, very diverse. Religions. So the care that we need is to get there and say, we have this knowledge. Let me hear what you have and see how we can both add to something that is going to create something bigger, more organized, nicer. But always listening first. Our part as developers of projects and being aware is to get the knowledge that we have and adapt to the knowledge they have, to their realities. It takes it takes more effort. I'm not going to lie, but it generates a lot of impact.
If I didn't know anything about agroforestry, what could you briefly tell me about it, about how it works, in your words?
Agroforest, as the sense of the word, is literally a agricultural forest. So it's a productive forest that it's managed, designed, implemented to produce agricultural goods. That can be wood, that can be bananas, fruits in general, vegetables, leaves. You can do agroforestry basically anywhere, in a vase or in huge amounts of land, because it's about creating a system that does not lose energy but maintains the energy within the system. When you look at a forest, what do you see? Like, usually you see a diversity of species working together to create an ecosystem that has a great immune system, so it's not affected by plagues, that it's creating abundance, that it's nurturing, right? That it's keeping the water where it needs to be kept, that it's bringing the organic matter down to the soil so it can generate more organic matter. So when we do agroforestry, we just look at nature and we use the nature wisdom, knowledge, and years of experience to create a system that works for what we want, to what we intend to create. We plant what we want to harvest. So we plant what we eat, and we keep the soil covered. We keep the organic matter down to the soil so it can be processed and turned into new soil. You can turn a degraded soil into a very beautiful forest again just by organizing and getting into the flow of the natural processes. And we as human beings, we can accelerate that process a lot. For instance, the pruning, when the tree grows, it would take many years for many leaves to fall into the ground and turn into soil. But if you plant trees that can take harsh pruning, you can put a lot of organic matter into the soil again in a very small amount of time. and that creates a lot of new soil. So this is a way of accelerating the process of turning degraded soil into productive forest. I guess this is what's agroforestry.
How deforestation and soil erosion is impacting Brazil in general and the agricultural regions?
Well, desertification and degradation doesn't happen only on the soil. When you have monoculture, you have monoculture of land, you have monoculture of species, you have monoculture of ideas. And that's very harmful because the natural way is diversity. It's very easy to see the impacts of monoculture in the climate, right? We had biggest droughts in the Amazon. We had fires spreading all over Brazil. We had water rise in the south of Brazil. So it's very clear to those who are looking that there is a climate impact to that, to destroying forests. But a more subtle impact is the monoculture of ideas. It's the hardening of people's flexibility to understand other points of view. And I guess nature brings that back to us, to understand that there's no right and wrong. There's just way things are, and you gotta accept, and you gotta work with what you have and make the best out of it. And don't push too hard. Work with nature, not against. So I guess that's the biggest impact, is depriving people to learn from nature.
I have a final couple of questions, and one is in relation to carbon offsets. So how are you ensuring results and building trust and validating or building validation to foster the involvement of stakeholders or companies or the private sector just being interested in invest in this kind of initiatives and projects?
We have two ways that needs to work together, right? We have methodology and technology. So we need the right methodology to ensure that we have a real impact. And when we talk about carbon, carbon is one of the indicators that should be looked at. We shouldn't compensate, like it's crazy how we talk about carbon neutrality when 90% of VEHA's projects are not reforestation, are just standing forests, right? So they're not actually capturing that much carbon. They're stocking it, which is great. We should have incentives for that. But can we really talk about carbon neutrality and compensation if we're not actually recapturing the carbon that was released in the atmosphere? So this is one of the things that we talk about a lot, which is we need to create a consciousness that only keeping the forest standing is not enough anymore. We need to create and to ensure that carbon is being resequestrated. And we need to create KPIs and methodologies to measure much more than carbon. Because that's the thing, the problem is not carbon. The problem is the temperature rise. If there's one thing that's a really cooling down system, it's a forest. There is this carbon lack of understanding in the market that actually when you plant a forest, you're doing much more than capturing carbon. You're capturing carbon, you're cooling down the planet, you're holding up water, you're creating food, you're generating income. So what we do is we measure much more than carbon. And we do that by using technology. So the way we ensure our partners and the companies that we're doing a good work is we geolocate all the trees. We have the quarters that they were planted. We have the satellite images. We have the name of the agriculture of the farmer. We have the location of the farm. We have a system to validate randomly some trees so we know that they are there. We also have a buffer that, like, if there was a fire or one of the trees died, we kind of have this buffer that ensures that you're not like losing the carbon, the offsetting, right? The compensation. So this is a few ways of ensuring that. But I believe that with the growing technology, it's going to become much easier to implement that, to measure that, I'd say.
Clara, finally, is there something I didn't ask that you wish I had, or anything you would like to highlight or mention?
No, not really. I would just like to invite everybody who's listening and to follow us in our work and see what we're doing, and say that we're always available to exchange knowledge and to build together nature-based systems. We believe that cooperation is key to regenerating. And thank you so much for inviting me to talk to you, to talk about this very special subject. And that's it.
Well, thank you for your time and for being here with us today.
Thank you so much.
This is Rooted to Earth.